Disney has canceled the Tiana TV series. But what people don't seem to realize is that this isn't an isolated event where just fans of the Disney princesses or fans of Tiana lose out. It is part of an ongoing pattern with Disney animation that is going to keep ruining not only their movie musicals, but may just kill off their TV musicals entirely. It is going to be so much worse than you think for both the audience and the artists. And so as a professional musical theater performer and songwriter, I'm going to tell you what I think and make you care. I can't say I'm surprised by this news, especially as someone who references Shay Frelis's Disney Plus video at every given opportunity, but the writing was really on the wall when Moana 2, the TV show, was retooled into a movie. We've known for a while now that Disney has regret with continuing certain franchises on Disney Plus versus giving them a theatrical release, especially when it comes to things like Marvel and Star Wars. But at least now for Disney Animation, we have the confirmation. Disney has announced that the animation studio is abandoning long-form content for streaming, which includes the Tiana TV show and an unnamed feature-length project. I don't think Tiana is going to get the Moana 2 treatment though. Disney does not want to do hand-drawn 2D theatrical releases anymore, and this TV show was apparently going to be in the same style as Paperman, which is 3D, which is odd because Princess and the Frog, as we know, was 2D. For a TV show, a different art style is one thing, but for a theatrical release, I think they'd want to maintain that visual fidelity across a franchise. The other thing is, this show probably did not have the level of stakes that a big theatrical Disney movie would usually have. It sounds like it was more Tiana slice of life, and I love that, but as for a movie, I don't think it would have translated very well. And they say in this article that they're going to make a short-form special, so I think this will be a lot closer to something like Frozen Fever, maybe, where they create a short that suspiciously seems like a TV show episode with the plot revolving around the new Tiana ride, and it's shown before another movie. Say it's shown before Frozen 3. Now you may be thinking, but Cal, if you think Tiana will not get the Moana 2 treatment, isn't that a good thing? Considering all the criticism you had for Moana 2, you don't want Tiana to get turned into another Moana 2, do you? But if you've seen my expose video about the downfall of the Disney movie musical, you'll know that there's always more to the story, especially with me. There is never just one answer. Even a single choice made in a moment that suited the project the choice was made for, like what we saw with Tangled, can cause a butterfly effect where that choice is replicated again and again in moments that do not make any sense, and that brings us to things like Wish in Moana 2. And this isn't even about money, because as we'll talk about, Disney has made spin-offs and sequels on the cheap in the past that brought in a lot of money. This is instead about how Disney's image of itself is killing off the in-betweens, the bridges that keep the IP alive after the big movies are over. So in the video essay that you should watch after this video is done, I talk about Disney racing to develop 3D technology to challenge their rival studios, and how that is snowballed in present day as a race to the bottom, choosing realism over style. I also talk about how this is all Pixar's fault. Of course, we want animation to innovate and evolve, but ever since post-Pixar, Disney has held technology above all else. With Moana 2, the official statement was that executives were wowed by early footage, and maybe I'm just being very literal, but knowing everything that I know about Disney, to me this reads the footage, the visuals, not the story. And even though I don't think that's a real explanation, they still said that over the story or the music being as compelling as the first Moana. That was said later, but the very first thing that they said was, oh well, it just looked so good, it deserves to be on the big screen, not anything about the storytelling quality. And in that, we almost find ourselves in this Ouroboros. Disney is so focused on visual quality that they do not care if the quality of the storytelling goes to shit, and a lot of us have been tunnel visioned on what that means for the big movies. But when I read about this news, it suddenly hit me, and I realized for the first time what that means in the reverse. Even if it does have high-quality storytelling, unless you want to literally burn money, a TV show will never have the same standard of visual quality as Disney wants for their 3D movies. What struck me about this news is that why in the world would they have Tiana be in the style of Paperman as opposed to something simpler like Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure, when Princess and the Frog was a 2D movie? That makes more sense if you want to put it that way, for it to be in 2D. Instead, they used this very expensive art style. No wonder this never came out. A style that completely breaks the bank without generating return on investment is how shows get canceled after just 8 episodes. But the problem is that Disney thinks a simpler or more low-quality style, usually code for 2D, comes off as amateurish to an audience that is trained to see more value or maturity in 3D over 2D. Let's take a survey in the comment section about this. Do you think that they would make a Tangled TV series today when instead they could have made it into 3 movies? Disney would never even consider going to a level like the Aladdin, Hercules, or the Little Mermaid TV shows had for something like Frozen today. Remember, just like Tiana, they gave Moana 2 a 3D style even when it was just a TV show. A 3D style that was probably getting expensive. Why? Why would they do that? Why wouldn't they hand Tiana or Moana 2 over to Disney TVA? And I know that this was supposed to be on Disney Plus. It's a little bit different, but still, why are things like the Frozen special so high budget when something smaller scale and cute would have worked just fine, like Disney has done with their past holiday specials? People love Moana. They would have watched anything with Moana in it. If this was about money, Disney could have done it on the cheap. But it's not about money. It's to make sure that people know this is a serious continuation to Moana and Tiana's stories, not like the Tangled TV show that was for little kids. Completely ignoring that, yes, the Tangled TV show was made for little kids, but ultimately resonated with teenagers and young adults because of the depth of the songs in the story. I guarantee because of that, unless they're already in production at Disney TVA and it's too late to turn back, shows like the Tangled TV series are just not going to exist anymore. And maybe some of you would have preferred if they continued Rapunzel's story that way, through movies instead of a TV show. Again, let's take a survey in the comments, right? But this choice is erasing content being made for an already underserved demographic. Shows like the Aladdin, Hercules, Little Mermaid, and the Emperor's New Groove TV shows are for kids, but they aren't for literal toddlers. Like, I remember watching them even as a preteen. Because they had a Monster of the Week-like format and protagonists which were considerably older compared to something like Sophia the First, they felt more mature. They could easily appeal to boys and girls who probably watch things like Totally Spies or Avatar The Last Airbender or Kim Possible or Ben 10 or Spider Riders on Teletoon. That one was probably just me, but you guys get my point. Ariel or Aladdin fighting monsters fits pretty comfortably beside something like Miraculous Ladybug. Like, these shows aren't for preschoolers, they could fit in between that like 7 to 12 age range. And they already stopped doing the direct-to-DVD sequels or things like Disney Princess Enchanted Tales, and so the TV shows were all we had left. And doesn't that suck? Like, these projects had fun ideas full of whimsy. I don't think we would ever get something like Cinderella, A Twist in Time today. It would not even exist. We would never get Anna being taken back to the events of the first Frozen and Hans having magical powers or something. Like, it just wouldn't happen, even though that sounds like fun, doesn't it? Fun on the cheap. It does not need to be this blockbuster movie. I highly doubt we are ever going to see any more Disney kids like Melody or Kovu or Kiara or whatever's going on with the Lion Guard, because characters like Anna or Maribel must stay eternally youthful for brand recognition and marketing. You can already see that so clearly with Frozen 2 and Moana 2, that there's this tension between wanting to allow those characters to grow up, but then also not letting them sing about their complicated feelings, and I talk about this in my Beyond video if you're curious, but you can see it in both movies. Even though some people hated that era of Disney and will say those things were cheap cash grabs, at least like in Aladdin King of Thieves, Aladdin sings about your father's a man who taught you who you are. Mine was never there. Like, he questions the idea of what it means to be a good husband and a good father. He actually grows up. Unlike Kristoff, but that's something that I talk about in another video, and you know, Disney leading man problem, it's cooking, I'm burning the food. Anyway, my point is, there are storylines in songs in the TV shows and the direct-to-DVD sequels that are 5 times better than what Moana 2 did. We need smaller, more humble, lower-budget stories to be told within these worlds, and by refusing to find a middle ground, everyone is going to lose, especially young girls who like the princesses but are outgrowing things like Sophia the First and can't really find a princess fantasy show to fit that void because it doesn't really exist. And of course, most importantly, it is the young black girls that lose, that only have one Disney princess and can't even see a continuation of her story, and have never gotten a musical princess TV show with a black female lead. And this just struck me all of a sudden, but unlike the movie where Naveen barely got to sing, right? Young black boys would have gotten to see a strong black male character sing about his feelings. We know there was actually going to be a duet between Naveen and Tiana. That's something that we never got. And it may seem like I'm saying, Disney, you have to make things that look worse, but kind of. I do think that they need to make things that look worse, and by that I mean aren't perfect, where you can see every single pore on a character's skin, if it means that kids get to have an actual childhood, that these characters don't just stay stagnant in the movie that they are in, but we actually get to see them grow up, something that grows up with us versus us just outgrowing Disney. Like, I can't stress this enough. Kids are being aged out of Sophia the First, and their only option for a popular animated musical theater show is Has-Been Hotel. It is getting dire out here. There are also consequences that if you don't work in theater, you may not realize. Alan Menken has actually spoken about this before, that he does not care for the remakes or sequels and does not consider them a continuation of what he worked on, but that it's great to give young writers work an opportunity. Reportedly, Randy Newman was not returning for the music, and so multiple songs were written by an artist who right now, we don't know who it is. It could be someone famous, but given Barlow and Bear, I really doubt it. I'm assuming it is going to be a more unknown young songwriting team. Now, before I say what I want to say, I do want to dispel the idea that you're only a good songwriter if you've made it to Broadway. That is not the end goal for everyone, and we need to stop treating children's media as though it's worth less or just for people that couldn't cut it in the industry. Like, children's authors aren't just authors who couldn't get their adult novels published. People choose these genres, they choose these demographics because they are passionate about early childhood education or passionate about these stories. That being said, though, I need to bring it up to make my point. When you look at Disney's direct-to-DVD sequels or the TV shows, many of the composers or lyricists started there, but have gone on to do bigger projects and even Broadway projects. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that the songwriter for The Little Mermaid, Ariel's Beginning, did Fun Home, Kimberly Akimbo, Thoroughly Modern Millie, and Shrek the Musical. And Disney has no obligation to provide those opportunities, but if you don't think that we're going to see the consequences of those opportunities disappearing, especially when right now at Disney there is no like songwriter mentorship program. They don't have Alan Menken, you know, sitting down with his apprentice and sharing all the knowledge that he has accumulated over his entire lifetime. And now where people get practiced in working with a team environment for Disney is disappearing. I mean, we don't even need to talk in hypotheticals. Look at Barlow and Bear. The Moana TV show would have been a great, low-stakes, entry-level project for two young songwriters who, for the first time, are working with a strict production timeline and have to navigate balancing their own vision with a creative team who have their own ideas for the characters. Or don't, and that's something you don't get to experience when you're working on your own material at your own pace with your best friend. Instead, a mixture of Disney's already terrible movie production pipeline and the fact that this was never structured properly as a musical clearly impacted the quality of their work. Even the Tangled TV show does not have a banger every single episode because TV shows are structured very differently compared to a musical. But for a musical movie, every single song must be so integral that if you remove it, the audience would not understand what's going on. And here's another thing. The sudden toss into the deep end also means they are receiving criticism on a massive scale, and they don't seem to be willing to listen. They've already disregarded it if you've seen their interviews as hateful, misogynistic, or people being blind to nostalgia. At least publicly, that has been their stance on it. I don't like to make personal assumptions about artists that I don't know. Like, I don't like to say, oh, clearly they have an ego, blah, 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 blah. I don't know them. Like, I don't really know how they feel, and I'm not saying that their attitude will, like, ruin their chances of being successful in the future, per se. What I do want to say is that a lot of artists would struggle under these conditions when it comes to their creative growth. I'm not saying it will happen or it won't happen, but think about it this way. If you were like, Cal, those lyrics you wrote for $20 were average at best, I'd probably be like, yeah, that's valid. I only got paid $20, so I only spent an hour on them. You know what I mean? It's easier for us to resolve and do better next time when the stakes are low. When a show takes time to find its footing and its audience and your skill can grow with the project. And typically, the audience is more understanding of this. Like, as long as I'm not like, guys, I'm the next Howard Ashman, if you guys see that I release a project that I put together, and you know that I had nothing but a moldy sandwich and a dream, you'd probably judge me at most compared to my past self. Like, is my work getting better than the work I released before? You would not compare me to a billion-dollar corporation. It's not wrong to criticize something in a vacuum, but I think that for most of us, the context actually helps put our criticism into perspective. That's why you are going to judge Disney more harshly than you would like a school play that the 5th grade class put on. But when thousands of people, even professionals, are saying that your movie's music is less memorable than a magical piano organ's villain solo in a Disney direct-to-DVD Christmas movie, and this is one of the biggest opportunities you may ever get in your lifetime, you don't want to think that you could have done better. You want to think that you're already at the top. Not just so, you're not haunted in the middle of the night by all of your regrets, but you need to believe that you belong with Howard Ashman and Steven Schwartz and Lin-Manuel Miranda. Because if you don't, that means that Disney did not hire you for your talent, but for some other reason. Your internet following, or because you're cheaper, or because Lin-Manuel Miranda was busy. No one wants to feel like that they are like a stain in terms of the legacy of the composers and lyricists who came before. And so people are inevitably going to get defensive. And in the case of like Julia Michaels and the Wish team, they have just straight up in interviews told us stuff that is not true. Like, it has been a lie. On a lighter note, it is true that with the internet, it is easier than ever before to make a concept album for an original musical theater project and garner an audience while having more transparency about the process. I'm really hoping that Epic, for example, will completely change the game when it comes to making musical theater concept albums, because there's so much exclusivity and secrecy. What I am hoping is that the industry will see the success of Epic and go, hey, we don't need to like secretly work underground in a bunker on this musical for like 16 years and only show it to the public for feedback when we're basically almost done. We can take an IP and start with a concept album and then bring it to off-Broadway and then bring it to Broadway. Because right now, yes, like obviously it works, but it doesn't work in terms of innovating Broadway. Like the method that we have now works in terms of stagnation. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I don't know if you've noticed, we're not really getting things that are completely original lately because producers want to rely on an already established IP to make the return on investment. So if things change, maybe more original shows will get made. I feel like that the music side in terms of getting a job is a lot worse than breaking into the performing side as someone who is trying to do both. But like even for learning, musical theater songwriters sort of used to have these like chains of mentorship. Like they didn't take on like an apprentice or a successor or something. But you'll hear a lot of successful composers and lyricists talk about like getting trained under one of the greats, right? Like say Sondheim. And then you'll find out that Sondheim was trained under one of the greats. Like it's this direct line down to to Lin-Manuel Miranda, you know what I mean? The knowledge, the critique, the praise, the method to evaluate and evolve your own story, all of that sort of thing was orally passed down. Like, yes, some musical theater songwriting books do exist, but I'm pretty sure I've read all of them. Like, that's how few that there are. I have read everything I can, and it's still not enough, at least not for me. And even though people like me can write their own songs and release them independently and hopefully gain an audience ready to watch me learn and grow as a composer and lyricist, that still doesn't really compare to working with a team. It's not just about networking and making those business connections, even though it kind of is, but more importantly, it's about the human connection of artists coming together and learning from each other's experiences. And of course, this video doesn't even cover all of the other jobs in animation, like the screenwriters and the storyboard artists and the animators, like people that get their start in children's media. I don't have a way to wrap up this video in a neat little bow because what more can I say other than it sucks? Everything sucks now, but it sucks so much that the stuff that inspired me to become a performer may not even exist anymore for the next generation to watch, or for my generation who is trying to work in this industry and can't fucking find anything. I mentioned this in multiple videos, but it was Twice Charmed on Disney Cruise Line which sparked my love for performing and made my ultimate dream being a Disney princess on Cruise Line. But if those things were pitched today, they would either be rejected or they would be made into a live-action remake. Yes, I was inspired by the big Renaissance movies, but in terms of my everyday life, it was songs like Daring to Dream from the Little Mermaid TV show that continued to spark my curiosity and my imagination and my desire to perform, like being able to tune into a new story with new songs every week and see them take these characters on new adventures. It just felt more creative and more alive. I'm someone who doesn't like to speak in absolutes. I mean, you guys know I make videos that are almost 2 hours long sometimes. I am the definition of like, I don't know, man. People be saying things so definitively, but I think like it depends. So I don't like saying we're never going to get something like this again because things could change again. But I do really feel like because they're locked into this idea they have in their heads about like visual fidelity, they're only interested in creating sequel material for the 3D era. Again, think about it. The new Little Mermaid TV show is inspired by the live-action movie. Mufasa shares the continuity with the Lion King live-action, not the original animated Lion King. And it all goes back to that idea of like, oh, that visual fidelity and like continuity. Like they don't want to add something to the original Little Mermaid because the sequels and the prequels already had something there. And I think they felt like they shot themselves in the foot by making a Tangled TV series instead of letting that live on in like 5 movies like they're doing for Frozen. They locked the continuity in the TV show. Also, can I just say that I think that that shit is really silly? Like, fairy tales were made to be retold. I could not give less of a fuck if there's the Tangled TV show and then they made a trilogy of Tangled movies that had a completely different plot line and even contradicted stuff in the TV show. Like, Disney is really strict about this, but like, who the fuck cares? And they try so hard to make everything fit together, to try to make everything make sense, that they're just shutting all these other ideas down. Like, you'll even see this with some of the novelizations. Let me know if you would like a video on, like, the Disney, like, Twisted Tales. See, Twisted Tales is okay because it's marketed as a what-if universe, but there was another villain story that they tried to really make canon, and it just falls apart when you actually look at it. But they were so concerned with that villain series, as opposed to Twisted Tales, with making those books canon, that they were like tripping over themselves to make everything work. And then like, why does everything even need to be canon? Who cares? I don't care. Not everything needs to be fitting in with the continuity. Anyway, just like me to go on a tangent when we're almost done, but I think that there's something sad about the fact that we're not going to have a Moana adventure TV show like Ariel, Aladdin, or Hercules had. They made so much money by making it a movie, I think that that door is closed off now. Like, why make a TV show when instead you can make a mediocre movie, I guess? I don't think we're ever going to see Anna learning week to week how to be a good queen after she's Queen of Arendelle. Like, they just wouldn't do that for Frozen when they can continue the story in the movies. And even though Tiana is perfect to have her own TV show, if they aren't willing to do a simpler style like they did with Tangled, and they also aren't aren't willing to make a 3D sequel because of the visual fidelity issue, we're just never gonna get anything with her again. I'm starting to feel impending doom in my heart, and I wonder if they will even make musicals going forward outside of their already existing franchises. But if you want to hear more about that, I will leave you with the Downfall of the Disney Movie Musical video. It has a lot of interviews, a lot of information. I do implore you to go watch it. But otherwise, this has been Calxiyn caring way too much, and I hope you care too. Hopefully, I will see you next time under some better circumstances, because this is not the video that I wanted to make this week. I wanted to do something fun and have a little tee-hee, but instead, we need to talk about the depressing state of our industry. Bye!